Then I told her Maya she couldn't use her crystals that she got to stop Pennywise because that would make no sense. You don't need to be cleansed that way. Oh, we're here. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another recap review of the hit HBO series It. Welcome to Derry, brought to you from the Culture Collective, powered by Big Gold Belt Media. Even though I was told to say empowered by, and I just said fueled by powered by again, but I like fueled by powered by for myself. But today we are here to bring you episode 5 of It. Welcome to Derry, and with my two very talented co-hosts here. First up, I have the Nigerian Nightmare, Michael Jedi Mike 7. Did I say all that right?
Yeah, Nigerian Nightmare is insane.
you
That's
don't
what I
watch
tell my
wrestling.
enemies.
I need you to watch wrestling, then you'll fully understand why I say that. And my other talented co-host, she is Miss Everything with the Culture Collective, Miss Amaya Desire. What is going on this evening?
What's up, y'all? Let's get to it. I'm scary today.
There you go. And we're finally getting into the big reveal of Pennywise in this episode. This is the reveal everyone has been waiting for, and you finally get in this episode. But let's go from the start of the episode as we open up with the ramifications of the interrogation done by Dick on the young native man. I lost his name that fast, but it's perfectly fine.
Daniel.
Daniel, yes. Daniel early on in the episode,
Daniel.
and we see that he is convulsing and everything else here. But we see Dick then turn around and tells the general we have the information that we're looking for. So I'm going to start with you first, Mike. What did you think about opening the episode this way, where we see the ramifications of Dick just probing into Daniel's mind, and then him just openly telling the general, like, hey, we got everything we need at this point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was and just the reveal of it, being the well house and everything, and just kind of we're slowly seeing, the glue of this series to chapter 1 and chapter 2. But no, I think with him telling that, finally we got pinpoint location, and you just think in your head like, hey, listen, it's like if this government or this military is trying to find where Pennywise is and stuff, why didn't that go to the house? And then you're thinking like, man, had anyone ever tried to go to this house armed? So yeah, that's I thought that was interesting. They say we got what we need, let's get moving. And then while Halloran it's just like going on just like what's going on here, like just, and then he just incapacitated because it's just the fact he's using all his energy just to get that. He end up damaging both of them. Again, great power, great responsibility, and great burden.
Exactly. Amaya, what did you think about opening this episode this way from the interrogation standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I thought to myself, wow, like one, I didn't know how bad it was going to be on Daniel in terms of like what Halloran was going to do. But like Mike mentioned, the fact that it also took a toll on him. Again, I stand with my previous statement in terms of they know that what they're looking for, one, is not of this world, but two, is way more dangerous than the military the general wants to like admit. But him knowing that, him constantly being warned by his grandmother, to me begs the question, well, when is enough for you to remove yourself from the situation? And I definitely, of course, I'm thinking Daniel is going to have to tell his aunt at some point in time once it full circles around and she finds out. But I'm just thinking, like, my goodness, this boy, teenager or whatever he is, I guess he's in his early like 20s. He fought so hard, and obviously, when you watch enough movies, they tell you like when you fight it even more, it hurts. It's even more
painful.
So.
Yeah. I think that was the good part of showing what happened to Daniel after the fact, is that you put it perfectly. We know from any storytelling humanly possible, if you fight something, it's going to have bigger ramifications to you later on. And we see that he put up a struggle for this information not to come out. But even with his struggle, it just made Halloran dig deeper into his mind and that's what caused the convulsions and everything after the fact. So that was a harrowing way to start the episode off. But then next up, we get another pinpoint of last episode, and that is everything that happened with Marge, as we see Marge in the hospital here. And we found out that Marge actually told them Lily tried to save her, and that Lily just looks guilty in this situation. One, would you just think about first Marge saying that Lily tried to save her, then her bringing up, I didn't believe you, and why is this monster after us? I'm asking you that question, Amaya. Just what did you think about this whole encompassing scene of Lily and Marge?
Yeah, so I'm not shocked that Marge actually said that, it was her. The reason why is because Lily had tried to tell her before, you know what I mean? And when you think your friend is going crazy, you don't have a reason to believe them. But then when you experience it for yourself, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, okay, now I understand what you're talking about. And that scene was super gruesome, very extravagant in terms of how Pennywise came after Marge, right? So when she tells the truth, it's now okay. All right, I know the patty cakes were getting to me and they were trying to make me do things I didn't really want to do. And, but now that I've experienced this, also, right, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation, right? So in this moment, Pennywise is both her and Lily's enemy, and she wants to remain alive. So I'm not surprised that she decided, to tell the truth. But I'm sad she had that such a drastic experience, but glad that now she can kind of see that her friend, it needs her to actually be a friend, because as she said before, right, we were best friends. I want to get back there. And of course we know she was just trying to swindle her, essentially, to get her to be embarrassed. However, there's always some truth in what's being said, right? So I'm just glad that they're getting to have this moment, even though it came after a bad incident.
Exactly. Down to Marge saying, if I told them the truth, I would be in Juniper Hill. So I can't even tell the truth. So now she kind of finally understands fully what Lily was going through. When if I tell the full truth of what's going on here, they're going to lock me up. And I told you because you were my friend and you saw what happened. And you didn't want to believe me. But now that he's come after you, you fully understand where we're at. And then in the following scene, we get the kids as they all meet up to talk about Lily meeting with Marge. And then we get Ronnie, who again, her full focus point is getting her dad out of everything. And she comes up to it, well, if Marge tells what happened, maybe that'll help get her dad out. And William has to quickly say, no, if we do that, they didn't already believe us. They're definitely not going to believe us at this moment. And then in the following scene, we get the kids go back to their little clubhouse. And in a tent on their clubhouse is Maddie. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you, what did you just think about first the short conversation between the kids about what to do with Marge, what to do with this information that Marge now has since she's outside of their group, and the reappearance of Maddie here?
Yeah, I thought Ronnie, come up with that idea again. She's just being a paranoid, daughter. Again, again, these are children. Like, what did you expect? My dad's in jail, so anything that's my full and only priority right now at the moment.
Exactly.
And yet you got voice of reason come in, like, come on now, we can't be irrational here. And then the fact of having that conversation with each other, like, no, she didn't harm me, whatever. It just giving her that sense of like, listen, I'm sorry for everything I did. The least I can do is say, hey, you weren't guilty of this, even though it's not gonna fix everything. But then I think this is people will say with karma, what you get for being a bad friend, whatever. And now, and this might be a new relief for her, and stuff. They actually see things through, no pun intended, but as because you only got one eye, so she can only see halfway. But
wow.
But at least I mean, we're going, but I was just saying with that, seeing the reappearance of Maddie. First off, it was seeing the intent, and then I'm like, where's the pacifier? That's that, the pacifier
hat. Really? That's what you thought? See?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let you get away with that. Okay. What I thought was this white child is way too pale skinned to be alive. That's all I kept on saying.
Yeah,
That's all I'm like,
that
his
too.
skin is way too pale to be alive. Like it was one of the things where you can okay, but maybe he's been in the sewer for X amount of days, no sun. I do, lighter skin with no sun. They do tend to get on a little paler side. But then it was just the reappearance of Maddie in general that kind of caught me off guard. So I'm asking you, Amaya, what did you think about the reappearance of Maddie in that scene here after everything we remember from episode 1 with him?
Honestly, for a moment, I was like, okay, maybe this could be Maddie. But his overreaction, they tried to play it so well. You ever see somebody super acting like, no, you can't take me there, it for me, that's what it was. I was like, no, I'm like, he's acting way too jumpy. He's threatening to go back to the sewer over going home, even though home is bad. Something is not sitting right. And then of course, down to them deciding to go back, and him kind of just being like there was no fight at that point, right? So if you're gonna give me fight, you got to give me the full fight. Don't give me like the 1-2 knockout, right? You know what I'm saying? I want to see the whole 12 rounds. And so I felt like he wasn't actually himself, but like you said, he was super pale. The way his hands came out the tent were very Pennywise resemblance. And so initially I was like, is this too good to be true?
Not only that, they bring up a key thing with Maddie in the following scene where the kids have a conversation about where have you been, and he lets them know it's a clown that took me in the sewer. And then they go, well, we go to the police about this because you know everything happened. You can vouch for these other kids. And I think this is the point where I thought it's a possibility it could be Maddie when he said, if I go to the police, they will take me back to my father. And I will go to the sewer before I go back to my father. Because we understand in the first episode, it was Maddie leaving Derry when he was like anywhere but Derry. Meaning we understand it's something at home that he wants nothing to do with. So Mike, did that persuade you at all that, hey, maybe this is Maddie? Because that is a very visceral reaction to even saying, I would go into the place where the killer clown is before I go back home because they would give me back to my father.
No, because it just, you understand Pennywise, you are what you eat. So he already knew that, Maddie had his fear about his father, so he's gonna use that to his advantage to lure the kids to the sewer. So I thought it was just another persuasion. He'd done this before, even in the in chapter 1, chapter 2, him, embodying people he killed in order to lure people in. Yes. It's like, how just that detail about me? Well, because I ate you.
Hold on, no, I'll interject over. Even in it chapter 1, he still didn't resist the way Maddie does about even going back to the sewer. Like, in all honesty, if it was Pennywise from it chapter 1, the moment they say go back to the sewer, he'd have been like, yes, let's do that. Instead, Maddie's like, no, I'm not going back there. There's no reason for me to go back there. What Pennywise had suspected the kids to threaten him to go to the police, because that would have been an odd thing for him to know the kids would do that threat to get him back into the sewer, because then that would make no sense, because then that would not be Pennywise to give a threat to go back. Instead, he would have been like, okay, let's go to the sewer, instead of saying, I don't want to go there and I'm not going there and you're not forcing me to go there. Because other than that, I would say this, it could be a little bit of when you know the conclusion of something, you can try to piece together the scenes that make it seem like that wasn't realistic. But the moment Maddie interjects and says, I'm not going to the sewer, if it was strictly for Pennywise to get him into the sewer, because matter of fact, let me put it this way. Pennywise's goal was never to get them into the sewer. Why would he need to go back there?
I mean, that's where he's strongest, though. So I mean, it's still
and
it doesn't.
In it chapter 1 and chapter 2, he attacked every kid outside the sewer. He never attacked them in the sewer.
That's not
never
true.
Did
he
he
did.
take.
No, he did.
He did at the end. At the end,
no. Chapter 1, he attacked one of the bullies.
one of the bullies in the sewer, because the bully went into the sewer. Every other kid he attacked outside the sewer because he does not need to be in there to attack you.
Yeah.
So why would he want to go back there? It serves no purpose for him to go back in there when I can eat you outside of here. I don't need to go back to the sewer.
He likes to play with his food.
So in playing with him, again, why would I? Again, I don't want to run around in a circle, but it's kind of, to me, it was always obvious that he didn't want them back in the sewer. It served him no purpose for them to go back there. Matter of fact, I don't want you back in the sewer because if I kill you out in the open, it guarantees more fear for me. If we go into the sewer and I kill you, there's no fear. I feed off of fear. I need more people to know what happened to you. If it happens to you in the sewer, you're kind of hidden away from everybody. If I do it out in the open, I get you in front of everybody. So I think that's the difference.
It will increase your level of fear if I, camouflage myself into someone only to manipulate you at the last second. That's the greatest fear of all. So
right,
by that logic,
that's what I mean, though. So,
but also that means now they're also gonna be fearful of people that they know. So that creates a different level of fear as well. So it can be seen both ways. But I do think that I have to agree with Mike. He likes playing with his food, and this is the epitome of playing with food because you're using my friend who's already dead, who I already thought was dead. Now you come back, and it's like, well, here I am.
I'll put it like this: it will go against everything that will be Pennywise for him to want them to go into the sewer.
Yeah, well, we gotta keep watching the see, right?
Yeah, because I think eating them outside the sewer creates more fear, and I'll prove it later on because something happens that kind of proves what I'm talking about. And next up, we get the general here, as this is when the general tells Leroy everything to do with the entity, as he calls it here, and he lets him know that one, the goal was to find out where this entity was at, and then the goal was to shrink the cage of the entity so they can contain it more. This is just him finally revealing the ideas to Leroy exactly what was the purpose of everything that was going on here. But this leads immediately to the anger of Leroy of him pointing out, you had me bring my family to Derry and you didn't tell me any of this. And then came the most important part of it, and that's the general saying, you chose to live off base. We did not choose that for you. So Maya, what do you think about this conversation between the general and Leroy? First of him finally telling Leroy everything, what their plan is. And then also Leroy's anger about his family being moved to Derry without him knowing any of this.
Hey, ain't nothing like somebody who did something to you not taking accountability, right? Because it's not like, and we don't have conversations. So we don't know if the general was like, hey, we really think you should stay on base, right? Because now if you emphasizing it to me too much, I might think something of it and I might decide maybe we should be on base. But if you give me the free will of choice, then I'm going to stay in a space that creates some normalcy for my family, which I mean, rightfully so. But I do think that in this moment in time, Black people are expendable, right? We may not be in the South, but Black people are still not on that level to me where they care enough about their well-being, even though Leroy is definitely, both him and Halloran are the top two that they need to be on the base. And so, yeah, I mean, rightfully so. I'm excited to see him upset and angry, right? Because now you put my child and my wife in danger. There's something funky going on with this town. And you got me thinking like la-di-da, like it's okay. And so for him to finally understand what's going on, and we know, again, like you said, he's an entity. You trying to cage something that is not human and is caged for a reason. It just makes absolutely no sense. And so I mean, again, the general had to be honest, right?
Yeah.
But he cannot afford to lose Halloran or Leroy. And
exactly,
it just, at this point, Leroy has to make the decision, as to how do we move forward with this. And I just think that he's very pissed with the general, but what does that look like if he leaves, right? Like, what, knowing his wife, knowing his son, they're invested now, right? What does that look like for the people of Derry? And so, yeah, seeing him get upset about it, I was happy about. I think that, again, I'm gonna use the terms that the kids are using right now. The general is Delulu.
Not only just the general, I would say Leroy too, because this is part of the thing his wife brings up all the time. You're Mr. Country. You're Mr. Following orders without having legitimate questions. Some of these things he's wondering now, he should have asked before he was taking an assignment.
Yep.
Like, it would only make sense to ask, hey, why is no one else living off base? Like, is it a reason why no one else is living off base? Or
That's
even
true.
worse yet, the base has full housing. Why am I paying to live off base? How long am I planning on being in the Derry? Like, these are questions you would have thought Leroy would have asked, but because of the man we know he is, these are questions that would have never even popped into his head to think about. So even the general saying, no one told you to live off base, it kind of puts all the burden back on Leroy. Because at this point, you can't even say the general put your family in danger. You put your family in danger. Because you didn't ask key questions that you should have about the living situation and what was going on. If we go back to episode 1, he didn't even know what his assignment was. So you took the assignment without asking questions here. That all falls on Leroy at this point. But next up, we get possibly...
I'll just say this real quick. That goes back to his wife, the conversation in terms of he's so busy trying to rank up that he will go anywhere and do anything that even puts his family at jeopardy.
And I think now's the full circle moment where he realizes she's right and it's my fault. But next up, we get the most important scene to me of this episode, and that is the natives as they all meet together to discuss the entity and everything that's going on. This is where you get the most information about Pennywise and exactly what's going on here. First, they talk about the cycles and everything, and they say that this cycle is not nearly as bad as the cycle from 35 and 08 here. And they said in total, it's been 25 disappearances, 7 deaths, down to breaking it down of the age groups that these people or these children at times have been killed. But they bring up something highly important that we brought up in episode 2 when Charlotte was going around the town and the kids were going crazy, as they said that the secretions from the entity is making the town extremely violent here. And they said this is all going to accumulate into a big event that's going to be the bloodiest and most violent event before you get another 27 years of peace. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you, one, what did you think about them having this meeting? And this is before questions about Daniel kick in. But what did you think about them having this meeting? And that they kind of know everything that's going on here, down to that the cycle is about to end soon.
Yeah, I think the natives have been warning us for centuries. You F around and find out. And this is basically what happened here. But I think this episode, well, again, each episode of the film been going this highward trajectory of giving me exposition, but also just expanding more on the lore, even though you're going backwards. Usually with prequels like this is like, normally, again, we just kind of get oh yeah, you're related to this person, that's only connected tissue. No. You have to ask other questions like why this person has not left the grounds of this town, and the way they visually displayed that in a way that showing the history, but also kind of even teasing for future seasons, just like, hey, this wasn't even nearly as bad as the one in 27 years ago, which is technically will be this show season 2. So that will be interesting to see if they go down that route. But yeah, I like the fact that you have some camaraderie of of this culture trying to do what they can to protect this land, even though the people and have not been treating them the best light and everything, and not listening to them. It's the same thing. Native people, they warned us about the damn vampires and sinners, and we didn't listen. They warned us about Pennywise, and it's again, when Native people are speaking, you need to listen. They know what they're talking about.
Well, here's the thing. the town has no issue listening. So it's not that the people aren't listening. It's one person who does not care, who clearly is. And I don't think he's not listening to them. He just doesn't care what they think. Like, what do you think? Just about again as we get later on in this scene, and Rose asks about Daniel when the other young man comes in, and all he says is, "I couldn't stop them," but she knew immediately who he was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you also this is again going back to the culture of training the next generation of protecting the sacred grounds and the history, and the fact of like, no, I did everything I could to train you well. It's like, I know it's it's okay, but then the elders coming in to support the new generation in some form or fashion, and just like, nope, now this is your time. You need to make things right and stuff like that. So I thought that was good, even though that's her nephew. I think that was still a very great emotional scene because he definitely was resisting, and it took a toll on him. And you just think that all your life was to, hey, do not be bound by said evil forces to because again of the greater good, and yet sometimes like it goes beyond your own limits physically and mentally. So yeah, I thought that was just a great scene.
I think it was good to show not only with the young boys in the Native community understanding what's going on here, but they pinpoint the young girl who's there, and you see the elders asking her questions so she fully understands exactly what's going on, down to say, hey, if this is happening, what does this mean? And she's able to say, well, this is happening here. And they're like, okay, expound upon it. What does that fully mean? And her going into, hey, this means we're going to have one violent event and then we're going to get another 20. I loved it when she said 27 years or so of peace. Think that or so is highly important because that means that technically Pennywise can come back before 27 years and start to cause that havoc again. But the point that they fully understand that, and that they also understand that, and I think this is something that we hear a lot in different lores about living with the monster that's there, because destroying it is not an option. And here we see that's the way the natives are treating this. Like, we have to learn how to live with this thing. We understand what's going to happen when it comes to fruition, but it's about the rest of the people in the town not knowing what's going on, and that's how it creates its victims here. So I think this is an amazing way to set up just how important the Native community is to Derry, because we don't see the Native community much in it. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, or even a 1990 film. We don't see much to do with the Native community in Derry, but here they're truly being highlighted in this series. But next up, we get Charlotte as she goes to see Hank's transportation, which is odd to even go see that, to Shawshank here. And then this is where one of the parents attempts to kill Hank because, again, they think that they took out his child. The more interesting part is that Charlotte looks in the background and it's a cop that clearly does the Pennywise smile at her as all of this violence is taking place. And then in the following scene, we get Leroy going to meet with Charlotte at home, and just him trying to tell her everything that's going on, and says, I need you to believe what I'm about to tell you and not have questions about it. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you first. Just what did you think about first the whole incident with Hank and him being transported to Shawshank and still refusing to say why he would be innocent here? And then everything that Charlotte witnesses here, and then her conversation with Leroy.
Yeah, everything with Hank again, just black trauma at its finest in the '60s again. Going on a bus and people still hating you for a crime you didn't do. But then said thing, I think it's going to spark some other things coming up if the timeline matches up. In terms of racially, things go on in this town, but also the fact that you've seen Pennywise there, it's a spirit, it's an influence that influences everybody there. And now this is the first interaction that she's getting with him from a level of like, no, something is wrong here. Now the entire was Hanlon family, right? Or Hanlon. What's the
Yeah.
Hanlon family. All of them now have some interaction with Pennywise, a balloon, clown face, or somebody watching them in the front yard, whatever. So yeah, this entire family's now know what's up. So
And then what do you think about the conversation later on between Charlotte and Leroy, especially when Charlotte took that call? Because that call had absolutely nothing to do with seeing that cop or Leroy. We still don't know what that call was for, but clearly she was talking to somebody, and she was talking about Hank with someone.
Yeah, again, this is what I see causing a rift in there. Not rift, but just like what the different plots of this entire family is going through, and now to the point that husband and wife is like, listen, now I got something going on here, and he's like, no, what's going on here? And then it's like, now are you gonna be fully honest with me about what's happening? And I'm telling you, like, hey, I cannot resist what's going on, because this is and then she's also figuring out that this is someone that's connected to town because of his what's her name, the daughter, Hank's daughter, Ronnie, right? Because if she's not just some random, girl in school, whatever. I know, because so she's connected to her son, and that's therefore it's like something's going on here and something's off. But it's like I feel that again. I had the privilege of interviewing these two, by the way. One of my questions was about their dynamic in terms of knowing what's going on in this town, in terms of not just like the racial factor, but the supernatural element of it too. If you want to get into a spiritual conversation, so be it. But like that is very real in terms of how strong and intense those scenes are with each other. So I'm glad again the performers, like, they just did a really good job of just conveying that on screen.
And Maya, what did you think about this whole setup here with Charlotte, Hank, and then the conversation with her and Leroy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like Mike stated, like the whole family has had some sort of experience with Pennywise now. And I think that it needed to happen in terms of the setup for Charlotte, because she's in it, right? Like the reason why Hank is even on that bus headed to Shawshank is because of Pennywise. And so at some point in time, she was going to have to experience that, because maybe there's a conversation that happens later on, who knows? But for him to just say, hey, something weird is going on here or whatever. And so her persistence and wanting to figure out what is happening, what is going on. And now her husband coming home and saying, trust me, don't ask any questions. We need to go. That's like ding ding number 2. So I'm not tripping, right? Like my intuition is on point and something is going on. And as far as the phone call, I know that I feel like she's talking to some sort of maybe lawyer or somebody who affirmative action,
a freedom writer or something. That's what I thought.
To basically get Hank out. You know what I mean? And so again, back to like this whole family, the persistence of each individual, especially being able to see the parents and knowing that that's where Will gets it from, right? And that the whole entire dynamic is a powerhouse. And I'm interested to see like how those conversations continue now that they're on base, but now that Hanlon and the son has had a very intense experience with Pennywise. How does that move, go on moving forward? And do they tell Charlotte about it?
Exactly. And I think it's going to be something else big that, as this show is going on, I kind of thought I was seeing it, but this episode kind of confirmed it to me. They're using racial undertones as a red herring in this show, because I don't believe there is any in Derry. I believe that the Native community, what they said is something that's why I said it's the most important scene in this episode. You got to pay so much more close attention to. They said these secretions are making people more violent. And if we look at certain interactions, like when we saw the guys with the military and we was like, hey, that seems to be racial. Was it? Or is that part of the issue with Pennywise? Because then we transfer to a scene that Mike, a black kid with no issue, is able to sit in a diner at the countertop and no one questioned it. Or the respect that Charlotte gets as she walks around this city where no one asks questions that you would expect them to ask, and something with more racial undertones to it. So I think that they're doing a good job of making that a red herring, because if you believe that the people in Derry are racist, it gives you a different element of the problem. But then if we pay attention to it, all of this has been conducted by Pennywise is to create the anger in the town, because I need the fear element to be portrayed more. Then there isn't a racial element here. But Charlotte and Leroy especially, you can't transport black people from the South into the North and not think they're going to see everything in a certain way. And is that Pennywise playing with them purposely because he understands how they see it? Down to Hank. Hank issue ain't racial here. It was racial because Charlotte said so. When Charlotte said, "Oh, you're dealing with a white woman? Oh, they'll all kill you." No, we find out later on, the white woman you dealing with, husband is insane. It ain't got shit to do with you. You could be white and he will probably kill you. And I think that's the red herring moving forward in this series. But next up, we get Rose as she goes to the base to go get Daniel. And here's a conversation between her and Francis here. But this is a very interesting conversation between them two, because Francis brings up something that has never been talked about in Derry before. We all know in Derry from it lore is that if you leave Derry, you forget everything that happened there. And your memory does not come back until you get back to Derry. But here, Francis brings up, he was given a drug by the Department of Defense that brought back all his memories of Derry. So when he got to Derry, the picture just became clear to him exactly what's going on. So I'm going to focus on that part first and ask you, Amaya, what did you just think about that revelation that he was given some form of drug? And we understand the way Stephen King story and mythology works here. This drug is possibly another Stephen King story. And he's given a drug that automatically brings his memories back about everything that happened in Derry.
I mean, first of all, the government always drugging you, right? So there's that. But I'm not surprised per se, but I am surprised because I think that having that conversation with Rose, right, is proving her point essentially, right? You're not, come on, whatever, water or oil or whatever have you that you're saying that it isn't, because now you're saying way beforehand you've had knowledge of what this is and you came here specifically for that thing. And so for me, I will say my favorite part about this scene is Rose playing it off and saying, well, you know what, that means you're going to need Daniel's help. And you need somebody to take you down there to guide you, and and they're both playing the game, right? But we know that the general's game is way more dangerous and it's putting people at risk. And so I thought for sure that this is a very interesting take on him getting his memories back due to the drug and having fakes, because he did pretty much fake it, right, for the first three episodes that he just didn't know. And so I see that this revelation, and quite frankly, I feel like I know at some point in time he will have his own encounter with Pennywise as well. But I think that he's willing to play with fire, and he's willing to do it at the expense of the town and everybody who's living there, because whether or not they are under Pennywise influence, they're still living people and they can absolutely die.
Exactly. I think that's going to be an interesting element here. But Mike, also, what did you think about this big reveal that whatever this drug is that the General Francis took is what got his memory back? And at that point, we know that's what made him come back to Derry, is because that drug got his memory back and came up with the idea to try to trap this entity to use it as a weapon.
Yeah. And again, I think this entire show that's in existing in the Stephen King world, I hope that we get, not just we get future seasons of this story, but just more series within the Stephen King world, that's disconnective,
Mhm.
like to other things, but not distracting you from the main plot of the story. Like, yeah, we can use said character, Dick Halloran, you know, but he is not distracting when you instantly see him, you think of Shining. Like, yes,
Yeah.
Shining's iconic, but we still have a story to tell here. But with this, I thought that again, it's also just showing that a way of drugs or opponents, it's able to clear the senses and expand on and make you remember things again. It's the same thing what Mike did,
Mhm.
in chapter 2. It's just like, wait, you drug me? Yeah, well, I feel weird, like,
Yep.
but I'm starting to remember stuff, and I'm like, you just look at the box.
You,
um
the weird part, I'm gonna say this, and then I wanted to get your opinion on this, Mike. The weird part of this all is the moment he brought up a military drug, I thought of the military drug or super flu that they use in The Stand, because it was almost the exact same thing where the military was injecting people with a drug,
drug.
and it kind of altered their minds a little bit. So I wonder, could that be a playoff of that? Because we understand all Stephen King work is connected, and could that be played off a little bit here also?
Yeah. Again, I didn't want to connect dots that don't exist, but with theirs, like if I wanted to with that, I'm like, yeah, that's definitely an option there. Especially bringing Shawshank and bringing in other things. It's you know it's there, it exists. And you want to use that plot device, you can. But whatever, it caused him to come back to Derry again. It's giving the reliving a chapter 2. Like, even if you're not in Derry, you being reminded of Derry is able
Mhm.
enough to just trigger you. To happen to the rest of the kids. In chapter 2, like, I'm not even in Derry, and I'm getting a call about, hey, it's Mike, from Derry. Wait, what? And then also my speech impediment comes back and all this stuff like that. Like, what?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, those things I feel is good in terms of just being drawn back to the spirit of Derry, but also feel like there's some unfinished business here.
I mean, well, first we always say this: nothing is ever brought up without it being a reason.
Yes.
So always pay attention to whenever they bring up something, it's highly important. And to bring up that he was on any drug, it's going to end up being important, because that means it's a memory drug for some odd reason that was able to get everything back. But next up, we're going to run through a couple of these things quickly, because these are not things that need overly conversations about, but these things are happening. So next up, we get Leroy. Leroy just is him gathering up the family to take them to the military base. This is again because of what the general said. Now he fully understands the danger that his family's in, and at this point, he just knows, I need to get them on the base, because for some odd reason, Pennywise is not attacking anybody on the base yet, because that's outside of the zone, most likely. Then following up, we get Lily, and this is her visiting the nurse at home, the nurse from Juniper Hill who helped her the most. This is what I mean by freakiness here, as the interaction between this nurse and her husband was absolutely freaky here. And you just didn't understand it fully. But the most important aspect of it is the nurse telling Lily, if this is what you believe, go through with it, but you do not need to go in the sewers by yourself. You're trying to save people, but you attempting to sell you people can end up costing you your life. And that is the most important aspect here. And then the following scene is we get Charlotte as she's just talking to Will as they're back on the military base at the home. And this is William trying his best just to get away, as she sees he's depressed and says, you'll see your friends eventually. And he asks, let me walk the base so I can see exactly what's going on. At the same time he does that is when Charlotte gets a call and also sees on the news that the transport to Shawshank has crashed and one person escaped, which is amazing because at that point we know who the one person is. And that would be Hank escaping and the multiple casualties that happen here. So I'm just going to ask this very quick question to both of you two. Do you think this bus crashed on its own, or do you think something caused this bus to crash?
Absolutely not. Pennywise is behind the scenes, or somebody who wants him dead. One or the other is my guess.
There you go. Mike?
Yeah, I think again, possibility of people because the town just want to be like, no, I want a piece of him. Yeah, send him to jail is just mercy.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah.
If supernatural elements, apply to it, I mean, then that's that's not the
How about
first time you've done that with vehicles, or something like that, before. But I think that'd be more interesting than people were wanting. They know that he's going to escape, but then also know that he will still be in Derry, so it'll be easier for him to find.
Well, you never know, because with the cop said at the beginning, you go to Shawshank, you won't last 48 hours. Like, they're gonna kill you the moment you get to Shawshank. So that's very interesting. Because again, at that point, prison, you just don't know exactly how everything's going to turn out. But next up, we get Lily and Marge as they arrive at the clubhouse. And this is the scene that we talked about earlier here with Maddie. As Maddie tells them all the other kids are alive in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And this is giving the kids hope. But here they come. We're going to go to the sewer. And this is Maddie being vehemently to them. I am not going back to that sewer. And then they say, if you don't go back to, as Lily says, you don't go back to the sewer, we go to the police. And this is when he finally agrees to go to the sewer and William arrives. So I'm going to ask you, Amaya, what do you think about this setup here again? We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but just what do you think about the way this is set up here?
I mean, again, it's I was about to say a scam, but kind of sort of, right? It's a mirage. It's a mirage. Maddie is presenting, Pennywise is presenting as Maddie and making it seem as though there's hope when really there isn't. And that's like the number one thing that you give people that they hold on to. And I mean, I'm not surprised at all that Will, I knew from the moment he was leaving that house, he was going back to his friends because, he is loyal, but also he knows that they're in danger. And so I'm really interested to see how this plays out in the next episode, because again, wondering what kind of conversation is Charlotte, Leroy and Will gonna have, because there needs to be a conversation about what is taking place on base, off base, entirely in Derry. So yeah.
And then in the following scene, we get the army as they arrive at the house, and this is just them starting to look for the pillars and them attempting to get everything. And then in the following scene, we get Dick, as this is when he starts hearing his grandmother's voice and hallucinating as they're going through the tunnels looking for these pillars. Mike, I'm gonna ask you, what do you think about the way they set up this scene with Dick? Of first him hallucinating, hearing his grandmother's voice, then him falling into the water in the sewer, disappearing, and then ending up coming out of his grandmother's tub.
Yeah, it was kind of given like Black Knight with Martin Lawrence. Black Knight. Remember when he fell in and then he went into the medieval era and everything like that. You know what I'm talking about? Black Knight.
Not even
Martin Lawrence.
No.
But your daughters
I know
are
what
free.
you're talking about. It's okay. It's fine.
All right.
About that. You can't just bring up random Martin Lawrence movies. Who remembers? I'll be forget Martin Lawrence is even a person.
Oh, okay. But I thought that was again a good scene of just with Dick Halloran with his grandmother. Again, there's a connection that he has with her. But I think it's also leading up to him being in a certain space mentally for his ultimate evolution of his character down the line. But I think again it was good that effect of he was on his own journey, and I thought Pennywise definitely was involved in some form of fashion to kind of steer him off the path. That was kind of like his MacGuffin that the military is going to use, and it's like no, let's take you out of the equation real quick. So now I'm just got my pick of a litter when I'm done. Kamara messing with you in your mind.
We're going to stay with Dick right here. Pause for the remainder of his scenes right here. Because next up, after he gets out of the grandmother's tub, we see him have a quick conversation with the grandma. She says, you need to get out of here because he's coming. And then his grandfather comes in with a pistol on his hip and he says, I know you two are talking to each other with your minds, but you need to stop this. And then he grabs a box and says, you need to open this box. So I'm going to throw right back to you, Mike, before going to Amaya. What do you think about the way they set up this? And what did you think the grandfather, because we understand this is all technically happening in Dick's mind, but what did you think the box pertained to that the grandfather was like, you're going to have to open this up?
Well, I think this is a piece of his mind that he was open to, that he was trying to contain. But I again, the grandfather knows something, but I guess just from his backstory, just showing that he definitely resented that their relationship they have with each other, that connection. And I think it's that, okay, like he has no sense of, a person that has no sense of control. They're going to use that against people to make them feel small, even though they are technically more stronger than him. And he just using that against them, and a level of fear. So I think that for him to open that box was just for, it was tempting him to quote unquote lose control or take off um the I don't want to say the leash or something that's been kind of holding you back. But yeah, but by opening his box, it's going to cause more issues for you that think he's been suppressing for so long. So
Maya, I'm going to ask you, because what did you perceive everything to do with this box? Because we kind of see, one, the grandmother knew that Dick created this box because she's very aware that you don't need to dig into this and open it up. But the grandfather, who is Pennywise, is really attempting to not only force him to open it up, but even think about opening it up because he knew at that point he can break Dick. So what did you think about the way they set this up and the importance of this box? And then we'll get into the final scene with Dick because we get to see the importance of this box being open.
So what's crazy is that when I thought initially, first one, I was like, oh, the grandfather's abusive, right? And he's violent, he has some issues. And then two, I thought to myself, whatever is in that box he was trying to contain, it almost reminded me of The Conjuring. And only a couple of people I'm sure I've seen the very last one, but where the mom is telling the daughter to tune it out. She gives her like this song to sing so that she doesn't, and in my head, I thought there's something in here because the grandmother clearly said, do not open that box, right? You make sure to keep it closed. And for me, I just knew that whatever it wasn't going to be helpful for him. And it was something that Pennywise knew that if he opened would cause more harm. And like Mike said, take him out the picture enough to incapacitate him to not be able to focus on what he needed to do in order to get out of the sewer. So that was my initial thought around it.
Yeah, I think that's the more interesting part of it, is the setup of exactly what this box is. So by the time we get to Dick in the final scenes here with him, we get to see him get out of the tunnels, but then we get to see him see someone. And then we pan right back to the box. And I wanted to, before we got to the end, I want to talk about this because I think this is highly important here as it pertains to the box. So what did that give you the conclusion of what was trapped inside this box? That Dick wanted closed and Pennywise wanted open?
His ability to see it, right? So he was able to control what he saw and or heard prior to opening the box. But when you can see it, right, like hypothetically, again, back to The Conjuring, if I can see these things during my routine of cooking scrambled eggs and grits, I'm going to panic because 9 times out of 10, they're coming out of nowhere. I don't have control, right? So now it's creating a level of uncertainty, going back to, Dick not being able to focus on the task at hand because now he's going to be able to hear and see way more than he can take on at one time.
Mike, what did you think about this big reveal? One, this is a huge, for people that don't know, this is a huge reveal in Stephen King's universe about this box and about what happens with Dick at the end of this episode. And so what did you just think about that, Mike?
Yeah, I think with that scene and what again significance of it, I felt that it was also well for Pennywise to know that the box was there in his head. Again, he's trying to find your deepest, darkest secret. And again, it can also mean just as for audience person, if you're not even a Stephen King, um, reader, you can
Mhm.
still just feel that some sense of relatability of like a part of your brain or memory that you close off, and the fear of someone trying to bring that to relive it, piece by piece, to create another traumatic experience for you, whatever. But with this, for Stephen King readers,
Mhm.
I think it's also just showing again just the pinpoints of like why even Dick was such a character in The Shining that he um that again, great power, great responsibility, burden. He felt like this level of burden of his abilities and stuff, which you felt like he didn't have in the beginning. Like he felt like he was probably in a trance whatsoever. But like, wait, how the heck did this guy become that? You know, and
Mhm.
because something was open in his mind, and that then released some things that's going to definitely haunt
Yeah,
him for years to come.
exactly. Now, for people that don't know, and why I say this is highly important, and this is why this is one of the best Easter eggs you're going to get from this series as it relates to Stephen King, is for the people who remember The Shining. Dick kind of talks about this completely, and he says between white grandma and black grandpa, and it had nothing to do with their skin complexion. It had to do with them. And the grandfather here, and why this is a great Easter egg to show this grandfather here. In The Shining, the grandfather is the one who physically and sexually abused Dick. And as he got older and he got into his powers of The Shining, which his grandmother has also, his grandmother taught him how to lock bad shines into a box where they no longer got into your head. Because if you don't lock them in, they all can come out. And at that point, it will cause you way too much turmoil. So by the end of this episode, when we see Dick as he's exiting the tunnel and we see the dead soldier come out and we see him stare at him, and then it pans back to the box being open, that's a shot. That's a sign that all Dick's bad shines are now out in the open again. So that means he can no longer contain it. So not only he's going to see dead people, he's going to see people who's done him personal harm. And the goal of those things is to break him, and it's going to hurt him. So I think that is a beautiful Easter egg they set up here of Stephen King work, even to show one that box. The moment they start talking about the box, I said, "Oh, to go down that path here in this episode here is to really expose people to the myth of Stephen King, and then to bring up the grandpa, who I understood exactly what he did to Dick and why Dick locked him in the box under his grandmother's rule to do so as a way to protect yourself, because he tries to teach Danny in The Shining to do the exact same thing, to protect yourselves from bad shines, because your mind is open to everything and you got to protect what can come in and come out. But now Dick can no longer protect what's coming in and coming out, which is part of Pennywise's plan, because if you can't protect it, you can't stop me. So that's going to be a very interesting element as we move forward in the show. But next up, we get Pennywise one. He just quickly attacks the two soldiers that was traveling with Dick. Not much to talk about there. It's just Pennywise being Pennywise at that point. But then the kids arrive into the tunnel and they all decide take 3 of these pills apiece to protect ourselves from this monster that's coming in here. Again, it's not much to talk about. There's a bunch of high kids going into a tunnel attempting to protect themselves. Next up is Daniel as he's in the tunnel with the army, and this is him taking an opportunity of them being distracted to try to run from them. In the process, he ends up dropping the dagger, which is the most important thing of this episode that we kind of talked about last episode, that he gets from Rose in this episode as protection. He drops it, and it leaves him vulnerable to everything that's going to happen into the tunnel here. Uh, Next up, we just get Maddie. This is just Maddie kind of leading the kids into the tunnel. This is where you kind of get the idea that this ain't Maddie. just from the way he's walking. One, all the kids are high, but him in the tunnel. Like if you were waiting to see something to show you exactly what was going on, that's the part there that shows you what's going on here. Then
Yep,
next up we
absolutely.
get Paul and Leroy. Now this is something to talk about briefly here. As they're in this tunnel, after Leroy gets direction, if you see something that doesn't belong there, understand you're not really seeing it and don't respond to it. But here in a tunnel, Leroy starts to hear Charlotte call his name. And as he hears Charlotte call his name, he sees her. And then she transforms into something else, and then he shoots at it immediately. And you can see Paulie is completely freaked out that Leroy responded this way. Mike, what did you think about the setup between them two? Just to show that amazingly, Paulie's not seeing anything. So that means Pennywise is playing strictly here with Leroy.
Yeah, I think using Charlotte was just again another way of getting into his head, and the fact of using his friend, I think it's set up for what's going to happen then in the episode, which is very emotional.
Yeah.
It's just again, I don't know what I'm seeing, but I'm trusting my friend here that I believe he sees what he's seeing. But at the same time, again, like that whole scene, even with her getting shot and the clown face, popping up, it was just that again visually is great and how it just it goes in and pops away and stuff like that. But that was again just setting up the teaser, just bringing something from your memory to trigger you.
Yeah. And next up, after that teaser, we get the final big reveal we've been waiting for. As this is when I hate you, Mike, because I already know you're doing that because Maddie's spinning around the pole. As Maddie here spins around the pole here, and we get to see the bodies of all the other kids that he told them was alive in the tunnels. And as he's spinning around, we get the big reveal as we start to see Maddie's head split, and Maddie turns into Pennywise. So, Maya, what did you think about the way they set up this reveal of Pennywise here? From one, Maddie telling all the kids that all the rest of the kids were alive. They see the floating bodies, especially Paulie's body. Especially Phil's body, because Maddie was very adamant that Phil was still alive. And then he ends up turning into Pennywise.
Yeah, I mean, we know it was a setup, right? Those Fordins, right? They ain't Jordans, they got. And now they're down there in the sewers and they trying to figure out what happened. Like, you ain't who you said you are. But again, I mean, like you said, him not being high and all the other kids are, him seeing extremely lackadaisical, very like like that gave it away. So I wasn't sure how he was gonna transform, but seeing that transformation definitely was like, this is very, very good. The transition was very smooth, and being able for the kids to finally really see Pennywise and his was necessary in order again to go back into that fear space, and them realizing, man, we took these 3 pills and we are still as fearful as we were if we wouldn't have taken them. And so very interesting setup for this, and especially since we know Lily gets lost along the way. So I was interested to see how this was going to play out, affecting each of the kids differently.
Exactly. I think that's the most important part, especially with Lily getting lost. But then next up, we go right back to Leroy and Paulie, because after him shooting Charlotte that did not exist, Leroy is immediately paranoid. And as the kids are running away from Pennywise and they're rounding a corner, he hears his son. And he immediately grabs his gun to shoot. And we hear Paulie tell him in the background, I hear and see them too. And at this point, Leroy is so focused, he pays no attention. He pulls the trigger, and Paulie jumps in front of his gun so he doesn't kill the kids, which leads to Paulie's death. But it also leads to the kids escaping the tunnel. I don't think it's much here to talk about, but that's kind of pinpoint of we understand the games that Pennywise here is playing with Leroy, so there's not much to ever expound upon about him playing with Leroy's mind here. But then we get Lily, who gets lost in the tunnel, and Pennywise goes immediately after her, and as he's about to attempt to eat her, he stops in his tracks as we see the glowing dagger that Daniel dropped in the tunnel. And it leads Pennywise to leave and then Lily to pick up the dagger. Mike, what do you think about this setup here? One, the way he cornered Lily and said, I thank you for... See, when I said we were going to go back to proving that Maddie didn't want them in that Pennywise didn't want them in a sewer, but that it took someone else to push him there, as he clearly here thanks Lily and says, I thank you for bringing them to me. Meaning that was not my goal, was to bring them down here, but thank you for doing it for me here. And then Lily being able to survive based off of the dagger.
So first, I just want to talk about visually how that scene was shot. One pinning her into the corner, the one missing of the dagger in the beginning, only to just land like that right where she was in the water. I know it stinks up in there, but aside from that, I to see Pennywise coming in as a silhouette and then going to charge, and then when he's in the monstrous state and it's froze. And it's like, okay, part of you thinking, is this practical? And then, or this is like visual, like, I mean, a mix of, obviously practical. So just the way that the scene was, and just like, man, that's like, and then the freeze frame, I'm like, and you see all the details of the teeth and everything. Like, man, I like, was that actually shot, actual prosthetic or something like that? Interesting. But yeah, again, it also, I think she's going to, whatever, she doesn't even know what this dagger is and this and everything, but because it's the one thing that kept her safe, I think she's going to hold on it for dear life, because it's going to prove her sanity, and which then probably will affect everyone else around her, because as a child, hey, it's my toy, it's mine, type mess. But I mean, they are middle schoolers technically, but
No. I would say we're in middle school. No one played with my wrestling men but me.
Yeah, and so just like so yeah, that's just gonna cause that, but I think she's going to hold on for dear life, because like, hey, this is protecting me. So yeah.
Exactly. And then next up we get the other big reveal of this episode, as we see Hank as he's scrambling around, and then he runs into the nurse whose name is Ingrid from Juniper Hills. And the moment he saw this white woman, I understood, this is the white woman you're sleeping with. And here we see them embrace and her invite Hank back to her house for safety, even though he says your husband's there, and she did not care in the slightest that her husband was there. But Hank says, I think I know someone we could go to for help, which leads Ingrid to go onto the base and come with, I'm assuming she came with Hank's jacket, so Charlotte would believe her when she said, we have a mutual friend and he needs your help. So Maya, what did you think about this setup here, this big reveal that Ingrid is the woman that Hank was with that night, and then hear her willing to risk it all to make sure he's safe?
Yeah, I was surprised, but I wasn't surprised, right? Because I knew that from the calmness of him saying just drive, it wasn't in a threatening way, it wasn't a keep me safe way, and that had it not been that way, she would have yelled out for help, right? Her husband is crazy enough to shoot anybody that's not a good person, or not a good person to him. But yeah, I wasn't surprised, but also I think the only thing I was surprised about that she was willing to risk it all, because she is going to the base, with his jacket. And anybody could have seen that and thought like, oh my gosh, like last time that we saw that was what the guy who killed the kids was wearing. You know what I mean? Very, very risky, but I'm interested to see where this goes, because can he just waltz back into the precinct and say, well, somebody attacked the bus, but I'm turning myself in? Or now do they have to do something completely different? So I'm interested to see how that's going to go.
Yeah, especially if she walks back with him to become the alibi that he always knew he had, because maybe she feels more empowered to do so. But And finally, the final scene we have not gone over yet is the scene back on base with Leroy as he's just going over the count of everything that happened with Paulie here. And this is just, again, the military is keeping records of everything. But as he's finishing up, giving his account of everything, this is when the general comes in and says, I have more questions for you about what happened. And Leroy tells him, I need to go and spend time with my family. And then Leroy asks him, have you heard or seen Dick? And he says, well, I haven't, but if anybody was to survive, it would be him. And then the final shot of the episode is, again, the box being opened with Dick living through one of the bad shines that he sees out in the open here. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you, what did you think about that final scene with Leroy and the general here?
I see dead people. That was that moment. He's, it's about the way he saw. But anyway, with the general, I think I had enough with your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've had it with these motherfucking clowns in the motherfucking town. That's literally what he was gonna say. But he stepped out. He's like, no, I need to spend time with my family. I brought him down to the freaking base, and I think they've had enough of me today. Of all this BS. I'm going home.
I think it's going to be very interesting moving forward to see exactly the ramifications of this situation here with Leroy. Because one, while we're paying attention to, he is strictly worried about his family's safety. He technically killed his best friend.
Yeah,
and that is not going to be something to gloss over. Then not only did he kill his best friend, and I'm not 100% sure, so one of you all correct me if need be.
He lied.
When Dick, it was very clear that he lied. But he lied because you can't tell him until you killed him. But when Dick is coming out the tunnel and he sees that shining, was that Paulie?
Yes.
Yes.
Then why would that be a bad shining for Dick to see?
That's part of what we'll have to figure out.
Mm-hmm. That's what's going to make that interesting here. But here we are. What are you two final thoughts on episode 5 of Welcome to Derry?
Ready for the next episode. Honestly, I'm interested to see how the season will end. Because not that I'm in a rush, but because they're just doing such a great job at expounding each episode we get into. There's more detail that comes on. Each character is developed a little bit more, and the storyline starts to really get threaded through in terms of what we know about Pennywise from the movies, and for those who have read the books, from the book. So I'm just interested to see, but I think this was a really good episode because, again, back to everybody in the family has experienced Pennywise now. There's a conversation to be had about why Will is, out in the sewers knowing that he's supposed to be on base. Charlotte having to help, Hank. There's so many different moments that are big moments, even though they don't all need to be they're big as far as the story, but the tie-ins are small, but they're still impactful. So I'm just interested to see what happens next.
What are your final thoughts, Mike, on episode 5?
Again, I'm loving the momentum of this show. Again, normally, if you're going to stay at television today, some of an 8-episode show, we kind of be feeling the effects of just a 4, 5, 6. Kind of be like, okay, what the heck's going on? But no, we're asking that same question, but not out of frustration, but more of enthusiasm, because of this show strategically delivering you with payoffs and enough meat for each week episode. And also, I don't feel like I've received a filler episode to date so far. So, which is rare, the days. But yeah.
I mean, this is not a Netflix show.
Or a Disney Plus show.
The Disney Plus gives you 6 episodes of filler and 2 episodes of Netflix. So this has been our recap review of Welcome to Derry, episode 5. So let us know what you all think about the tunnels and the final reveal of Pennywise. Also, let us know what you think about Francis and Rose, and how is this situation going to expound upon with these two, especially after Daniel lost the biggest weapon that the natives had against Pennywise. And finally, what do you think about the kids here? And with the big reveal that this clown that they've kind of all been seeing is now coming after them, how will this move forward with the rest of the kids in the town also? He already attacked Marge. Is this going to lead to him attacking more kids as we come to the accumulation of this huge event that's supposed to happen before we get to peace? So again, like, comment, subscribe. Our episode drops right after the episode drops on HBO and HBO Max. So check us out. Let us know what you think. This has been another recap review brought to you from the Culture Collective, empowered by Big Gold Belt Media. Peace, people.